All right, guys, so now we want to be able to edit our listing. So there's really two steps to this, and we're going to do it in two videos. First is going to be to create the edit page. You can see it goes to properties and then the ID and then /edit. So we want the form. We also want to fetch the properties or fetch the property and put it into the form, all the details. And then the second part will be to actually create the API route to update the data in the database and handle that. All right, so let's create the page. So it's going to be under app/properties/ ID /edit. So app, properties, ID, and then a folder called edit, and then a file called page.jsx, and we'll do RAFCE. Let's call this property edit page. So now we should see that here. And then we'll have a form, right? So let's go to components, create a new file called property edit form. And for now, we'll just do that, and then we'll bring it into the page. So import property edit form. And then the HTML that goes around the form, I'm going to copy that from the add page. So this add page right here, this section, I'm going to just grab that and then put that here. Except we're going to change it from add form to edit form. So far it'll look like this. Now the form is going to be very similar to the add form in terms of the fields and stuff. So let's just copy everything from property add form, that component. Let's copy everything from here. And let's paste it in the property edit form. Just make sure that you change the function name in the export. So here and here, change it to property edit form. And change the button here to update property. And then the heading up top, let's see, the heading up top is going to be edit property. Okay, so make sure you're on the right page. Now, this is going to be a little bit different in terms of the way that we submit. We're not actually going to use the action here because it's going to be a put request, and we can't do this, right? We can't say method put. So we're going to add a handler to this. So we'll get rid of all that, everything that's in that form tag, all the attributes, and let's say on submit, set that to, let's say, handle submit. And then we'll put that right up here, const handle submit, set that to async, and then a function. And we're not going to add that stuff just yet. Now another thing I'm going to do is get rid of the images. I don't want to update the images or edit the images on this page just because it would be a huge headache. So I might add a different page to do that later. Like on the profile, for instance, maybe we can have an add images or update images button, but it's just too much of a headache the way it works to do it on this form. So I'm going to get rid of the handler, the handle image change. We'll just get rid of that whole thing. And also the image field down at the bottom. So right above the button, this div right here for the images, we're going to get rid of all that. And then also in the state, let's get rid of the images array right here. All right, so save that. We should be good as far as warnings and all that. What's this? The resource URL is preloaded using link. A few seconds. Please make sure that should go away. Yeah, that should be fine. All right, now we need to fetch the data. So what I'm going to do is actually use what we already have in our utils request.js. So this right here, fetch property by the ID, we can use this in our form and then basically just fill in the fields with the response instead of making a whole new request. So why don't we bring in that and a couple other things. So let's see, we have use state, use effect. We're going to need to get the ID from the URL. So to do that, we need use params. So let's say import use params. And let's also get use router. And that's from Next Navigation. Then we'll also get toast. So import toast. I'm pretty sure we're going to need this for something. Let's say React dash, what is it, Toastify. And then we want to bring in, like I said, that fetch data. Let's import fetch data from, not from that, from, wait, is it fetch data? No, fetch property from the utils file, or the request file in the utils folder. Now, right above the state, let's go ahead and get the ID. We can do that by saying ID, destructure it from use params, and then we have to initialize the router. So use router. And then I'm going to add a loading state as well. So right under the field state, let's say const loading, set loading. That will be from, let's say, use state, and that'll be true by default. All right, so now we're going to fetch it from our use effect because we want this to happen, when the page loads. So let's go under the set mounted here, and let's say fetch property data for form. So we're going to create an asynchronous function. So we'll call this, don't call it fetch property because that's the name of the other one. So we're going to call it fetch property data. Set that to async. And then let's do a try catch. And let's say const property data. We're going to get that from await fetch property. Pass in the ID, which we're getting from the URL using use params. And then let's populate the fields. So set fields with that property data that we get back from the server. And then in the catch, for now, I'm just going to do a console.error. And we'll just put in the error. And then I'm going to put a finally, because no matter what, we want the loading to set to false. So set loading to false. Okay, and then down here in the return, let's say mounted and not loading and. All right, so let's save that. Let's check it out. Mounted and not loading, then show setting loading, setting the fields to the property data. What am I missing? Oh, we didn't call the function. So we defined fetch property data, but now we have to go underneath it and call fetch property data. Okay, so now you can see everything is being added, even the checkboxes. Now we do have a warning down here. It says value prop on input should not be null. And what that's talking about, it took me a minute to figure this out, but if they don't add one of these monthly, nightly, or weekly, it's actually null, right? It's in the database as null. So in fact, we can see right here, nightly null. So you can't put null into an input, and that's what it's trying to do, right? So in here, this should be, if not a number, then it should be an empty string. Now, we could change how we store it in the database, but I don't really want to do that. So let's just run a check right after we get the property data here, and let's check for any null values in those rates, and if it is, then we'll make it an empty string. All right, so right here under property data, let's say check rates for null, and let's say check rates for null. If so, then make empty string. Now there's a few ways we can do this. I want to do kind of the shortest way that I think we can do this, and that's saying, first of all, if property data and property data dot rates, then let's say const default rates, set that to an object, and we're going to spread across property data dot rates. Okay, so we're just creating an object, and then we'll loop through, let's say for, so we're going to use a for in loop. So for const rate in default rates, and then inside the for loop, let's say we're going to check to see if any of these are null. So if default rates rate is equal to null, then let's set that default rates rate to an empty string. Okay, and then let's go outside of the for loop, and then we just need to set property data dot rates to the default rates. Okay, so now if we come back over here and reload, hopefully, yep, the warning goes away. And now that's set to an empty string rather than null, and it doesn't give us that silly warning. Okay, so I think we're in good shape here. We have our edit form, we have all the fields in the form. So what we'll do next is add the API route to update, and then we'll add the logic to, where is it? This right here, handle submit, to actually hit the route and edit the content.